up a really fun podcast, and I'm excited to share it with you guys today. I got the opportunity to interview a friend of mine, Ben Peck. He's a great person, amazing guy, and I've really been interested in some of the moves that Ben Peck has been making here recently. He's a man of many talents, one of the founders of the Front Conference, the Product Hive Meetup, and has done amazing work with Jane here locally in Utah County. I've really admired him from afar, and recently some of the things that he's been a part of or doing have kind of capitalized on this point. He recently posted out on social media that he's leaving Jane, he's uprooting his family, and they're moving to New York City. And at first it took me back. I was going, oh, that's kind of a shocker. I didn't realize that was necessary after all the success he's had here in Utah. But coming to find out that he and his wife have had a few conversations, and she's going to pursue a passion of hers, something that brings her happiness, and she's going to go back and get her master's in fine arts. She's going to be going to school in New York, and Ben's going to have the opportunity to be home with his 4 kids and continue to pursue some things remotely, but again, have the opportunity to stay home and be kind of in the family man role while his wife gets to pursue some of her passions and hobbies and interests, and he gets to support her. Now, that's something that we don't see very often, and I fall into the realm of sometimes being caught up in my own life, and I admire his ability to recognize the importance of family and the happiness of his spouse, and putting his kids' needs first, and I admire his recognition of work-life balance. It's a topic that I'm really excited to share with you guys today. So without further ado, let's jump into another episode of Design Today featuring Ben Peck. I gave it a listen. This is it more emotional than most? I don't think it's emotional, but man, we do hit on some heavy subjects. That's it. Design Today. Here we go. Well, Ben, thank you for making the trip down here. It does mean a lot that you would rearrange your schedule. I did not realize you lived all the way up in Layton. So
not many people do, because I don't complain too much about the drive.
Well, and I'm sure you had, well, I don't know, maybe you didn't. Didn't you have some sort of say where Jane was going to set up roots, or were they already pretty much there when you started there?
Oh, like at the office?
Uh-huh.
No, I didn't have any say of where.
That was done.
That was done.
That was done.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, I'll commute.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, that's a trip.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you taking the time to come down and meet with me on my little old podcast here.
No, it's awesome. I'm so glad that you do it.
The reason I wanted to have you come on the show, as I reached out to you and said, is I've been, I'm continually impressed by you. But there's 2 things that you've posted recently that were in the same vein, and you probably don't even recognize this yet, but you posted, maybe it was a tweet that you sent out about Incredibles 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I do.
Do you vaguely remember
I do remember that? Yep.
And your comment in your tweet was something along the lines of like the blend of like family balance, work balance, like that type of setting. And that's actually what triggered in my mind, like, I'm going to check out that movie then. Because it's something that weighs heavily on my mind. And then obviously a couple weeks later, I read that you're heading out.
Yep.
And you're going to New York.
Yeah, those 2 definitely correlate with each other, just because I had that on my mind, but I hadn't told anyone yet, really, that I was leaving Utah. But yeah, so much of that movie mirrors my life to some degree because of the marriage in that movie. Mm-hmm. The way that I don't know if I feel the same way as like Mr. Incredible or anything.
You are Mr. Incredible.
Well, he's like super like bugged that his wife is like the star and everything like that. I don't feel that way per se. But I am, I'm kind of stepping back and saying, okay, I'll take care of the family. I'll be at home. If people get sick, I'll take care of it this time. And my wife's been support me for 15 years. That's figured awesome. That why wait until she's 50 until I say, okay, now you can have some time to yourself or whatever, or your dreams. So it's, I mean, I had no reason to leave Jane. There was no like point in time where it was like, this is the perfect time to do it. It was just, she finished her bachelor's degree, which took her 10 years to do with raising the kids. And
to be clear, you've got 4 kids.
I've got 4 kids, yeah.
Aging from?
Oldest is 13, 11, 9, and 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's had some time at the house with the kids.
She's had, plenty of time at the house.
Supported you through a lot of your endeavors, including Jane, Product Hive, Front. What were you doing again before Jane?
I was at a small startup called Needle.
Needle, that's right. Yep.
Yep.
So she supported you through the years, and now it's time to, how do you put that into words? What are you doing? I don't want to call this stepping aside, but how do you say this in words?
What am I doing right now?
By allowing her to pursue her happiness. I mean, how do we word this?
Yeah, I would say I'm allowing her to have more freedom than she has had in the past. I don't know if it's even fair to say that I'm allowing it, because it's her right to have do what she wants to do, and she looks at herself as maybe more of a less a non-traditional mother that doesn't. She loves her kids dearly,
right?
But she cares about kind of feeling like she's herself, that she's Amber and not just mom, right? So I don't know, it just came to a point where I felt like we could kind of make this jump, and with the way that Front has been going over the last 4 years, I feel like we can kind of I can focus all my time on that. And Product Hive, we don't make any money. It's all nonprofit organization. But I was working 3 jobs essentially, working full time for Jane, and all my spare time went towards Front, and whatever I could put towards Product Hive went to Product Hive, a nonprofit, just pure community building organization. So it feels nice to be able to kind of let go of that, but also kind of when people say it's like a leap, it's like an emotional leap to make that change. And for her, we're Utah, homegrown people here. We've never lived. Amber for sure has never lived anywhere else in her life, and I only lived in Venezuela for a couple of years for my LDS mission. But yeah, it's quite a leap for us.
So I need to credit you in the sake of you've been mindful of your wife's needs. You've been mindful of her happiness. You've been mindful of obviously what she wants to pursue and whatnot. And I think that just being able to recognize that takes a bit of thoughtfulness. But outside just being mindful of it, what was the thoughts, the conversations that went into it between your wife and I that got you guys to this point?
So my wife's pretty open now at this point about her struggle with depression. And ever since our second child, our first son, she had postpartum depression, and it got really, really bad. She still goes to therapy to this day because it's good for her. She put herself into art as an outlet for something that she could focus herself on. And that has just been part of her life for the past, 5-6 years. And it really improved her depression, right? It made her feel happier, and it made her feel more important in her life. And through those 10 years of school, we both started school. Well, I started school a bit before her, but we were both at BYU. And anyway, she went through that process of getting a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and that was a huge accomplishment for her. And so she said, well, I just want to continue this. If I really want to go into fine art photography, a master's degree will help me, one, create the connections I need to better understand the industry, and so she really thought, okay, where can I get this education and continue the education with a master's degree? And so she looked around Utah to see if it was an option to stay here and get a degree here, but quickly realized that, like, in the art industry, there's really two hubs. There's LA and there's New York, right? And so that opened up the doors to, okay, we gotta apply to other cities outside of this, outside of Utah, which was a conversation in itself. To your question,
Right?
Like, we
Open and looking somewhere else.
It's like, okay, we're gonna move. What does this look like? Where do we want to live? And then how does that look at the effect that it plays on our family? What would be best for us, but also for the goal? So she even though we're doing this for her, she's always been more mindful of other people than she has of her. Even when we're in a fight, she'll like go away, like go get ice cream or something, take a break, and she'll come back with like something that I wanted. Like, she'll bring me chocolate. Even though, like, we're in a fight, she'll be thinking of, like, oh, Ben probably wants something like this.
That's a good way.
Anyway,
That's cool.
So that really brought us into her choosing to go into a different state.
Yeah.
She ended up applying to 10 schools outside of Utah, and because she didn't know if she would get in or not. They only accept 8 to 10 people in the master's degrees of fine art. So it was always a risk.
Yeah. So you're hitting on this topic of work-life balance, and that's something that's been on my mind now for a while. You know, I had a conversation with a couple of people at Domo, candid conversations that I continually struggle with balancing work and life. And by that I mean I move in spurts. You know, like I get really dedicated to work, and not just my full time, but what I do outside of work, you know, continue to design or podcast or, you know, whatever it may be. I get really focused on that. But if I dive in feet first without being mindful of what else is important in my life, I notice that, you know, my kids' behavior changes. And when their behavior changes, I recognize, well, it's behaving differently because they haven't seen their dad in 3 days. You know, they haven't had the chance to wrestle with that. They haven't had the chance to, you know, fool around or goof around or, you know, interact. And as soon as I get back involved over here, things start to balance out. They feel a little bit, you know, more in sync. So this idea of like, man, how can I continue to pursue what I feel is going to provide for a family, make me happy, progress my career, but yet I'm doing it for this group. I'm doing it for the family. But sometimes you can go so far one way that the people that you're doing it for aren't actually benefiting from it. They're losing out on the opportunity that they have. So this topic is something that I've been chatting about with people for a while now. And one of the things that I had a conversation with somebody at Domo, and their response to me saying, I need to find better work-life balance. They said, well, Dylan, it's not Domo's responsibility to help you find work-life balance. It's your responsibility. And legitimately, as much as I didn't like to hear that, it's true. It's on me. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I needed to be more mindful of. How have you, what things have you found that have helped you maintain that balance?
Now, this might, I don't think that I wouldn't say I have like a perfectly balanced life. I was working 3 jobs.
Sure.
And my wife was trying to go to school and watch the kids. So let's just say my house is a mess. Like, we're just messy people because we don't dedicate time to that. Mm-hmm. Lawn's not perfect. Mm-hmm. So something sacrifices.
Are those things unnatural for you? For example, like, do you care about a nice lawn? Do you care about a tidy house?
So I care heavily about a nice lawn. I was raised by a dad who loved...
You lived on a golf course.
Yeah, exactly.
I get it. I did the exact same thing. I mowed the lawn twice a week. Do you know how unreal that is?
You made the hashes like a golf course.
Our golf course looks like a putting green. Like that's how I was raised, right? So how do you balance? How have you learned to live with the fact that this is taking a back burner?
I just so Cameron Mull posted something recently. I can't remember when, but he said he'd given up on balance. And it all came down to priorities. So it really just was, you stack rank what's most important and you focus on those things more than others. Right?
Okay, I like that idea, but how do you then, let's say priority 1, then you put your wife. Priority 2, you put your kids, right? Let's say those are your priority, and priority 3 is your podcast. How do you get to the point where you say, like, priority 1, done. Priority 2, done. Priority 3, now I can work on it.
That's a good point. I don't know. I don't know. I think it really comes down to individual times and individual days. I've had my fair days where I say I'm gonna go do this, and I don't consult with my wife of what I'm gonna do. So maybe it's more around the idea that you just, from those priorities, you make sure that they're aware that you're going to go work on the third priority right now, so that they're kind of an ingredient with what you're going to go work on. And I think that this works just as well when you're prioritizing work at work. So say you have a list of things that you want to get done. Sometimes the third or fourth thing is the thing you want to work on, but you need to work on the 1 and 2. Sometimes you have to just say, okay, I've done as much as I can on 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And then I can go full focus on 3 or 4.
So it's not necessarily saying priority 1 and 2 done, but they've gotten the attention that they need. They've gotten to a point where you're comfortable enough to move on to the next priority.
Right. To give you an example, so you were the first guest on my little video podcast thingy that I'd been doing. I didn't tell my wife I was going to do that, and I went and started doing some of those, and she was like, "You're adding another thing onto your life." And so it was like, it's one of those things where I should have said, "Okay, I want to go try this thing and make sure that it's not going to conflict." Just like you were saying, where sometimes you get so focused on what you like doing, that you see this behavior change or these other things start lacking because of the balance. So I guess that there is balance. You can't just totally dismiss that there is no balance. But I don't know. You have to. My wife and my kids have always been my priority.
Yeah.
If my job got in the way of it, I had to say goodbye. Right. Yep. One of my second job, I loved the job. I loved working for it. We did amazing work. But there was a point where I just said, I can't do this anymore. One, I just had outgrown the company. The company wasn't growing as fast as I wanted to, or I had the people that I worked with, them and their wives worked, so their total income was much higher than mine, and they were willing to wait for the company to grow a little bit slower than it was, and I just had to say goodbye. And we had a good departure, right? But sometimes you have to say, okay, this is my priority, and these are my goals, and sometimes that doesn't always align with jobs.
Yeah.
But,
There was an article I was just reading yesterday, and it was talking about, it may have been clickbait, but for the most part, it was actually a good read. It was talking to Jeff Bezos. Yeah. He disagrees with this idea of work-life balance, and he says, in turn, he talks about work-life harmony. Because someone in his position or of his stature, he can't compartmentalize, I'm the CEO of Amazon, I'm a husband, and just do the CEO of Amazon 9 to 5 and then do the husband, outside of 9 to 5. He says more often than not, what he's recognized is that the attitude or the things that take place in his workday, the feelings, the animosity, or the, even the happiness, whatever happens at his workday, he ends up bringing that home. And whatever something happens at home, he ends up bringing that to work. And so it's not necessarily about like compartmentalizing work and life, but about finding harmony between the two, because they are going to overlap. And I'm still trying to sort that one out in my own mind, how that fits into this idea of, my striving for better work-life balance. But I recognize what he's saying, because there are days where I get down on myself. I didn't accomplish my to-do list. Because I don't accomplish my to-do list, I come home frustrated. And then I'm frustrated and I'm short with my kids. Or I'm short with my wife. And then I go right back up to the office to try and get more to-do list things done. So I recognize that there's a bit of truth to what he's saying, is that they're going to bleed into each other. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I totally agree with that. Like, if you have a good day at work, or if you feel like you didn't accomplish everything that you wanted to accomplish, or there were more conflicts than you'd hoped for, that definitely bleeds into the home life. I will say, having a 45-minute to an hour drive to work,
that helps.
when I worked for Jane, was nice, because it was a decompression. If I had a bad day, I could not listen to music, not listen to any podcasts or radios or whatever, and just think like about what was going on. So by the time I got home, I could say, okay, I'm done. Like, I've worked through my thoughts or frustrations or happiness to whatever that I didn't bring at home.
Yeah.
Now that's going to be a new challenge working from home. So where do I find this kind of break or this time to decompress if something's not going well? That's going to be a new challenge for me specifically. But that commute helped. Yeah. And my wife recognized that.
Really?
She's like, I could never commute that long. Like, I'm willing to move if you need us to. But I just said, if I can get in that express lane and just turn off like a lot of the frustrations of driving,
that's worth it.
That's worth it. Yeah.
It's funny. I was having a conversation with a girl who I work with the other day, and I gave her a recommendation. And I'll share the same one with you. Maybe you'll find this beneficial. I recently, over the last 2 years, taken a liking to meditation. And it sounded so, like the idea was so foreign to me. But as I've battled through, I've had more anxiety. The older I get greater social anxieties. I get greater stress anxiety. I get overwhelmed with, just the ADHD. I mean, like there's those mental things at play that, as I studied out how to deal with these types of things, meditation comes up over and over. And my commute now is 5 minutes, but you better bet that anytime I'm having one of those days, those 5 minutes in the car is spent with this app called Calm. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a meditation app, and there's different types of body scans or different types of meditation strategies or techniques that you can go through that will help center yourself. And I gave that advice to this girl at work the other day, and she tried it on her way home. She's like, oh yeah, that worked a lot better. Being able to decouple work from home life. But the meditation thing, I've come back to that over and over. There's a couple times even at work I'll get out of a frustrating meeting and I'll just go right to my car. Give me 5 minutes and I'll be back, because it allows me to decompress, like you mentioned. Yeah, I miss that in the commute.
I find that a lot of that kind of stress and anxiety in my personal life come from social media. So I'm a huge social media person. I love Twitter. I love LinkedIn, and I use Facebook sometimes for family. But if I'm on Twitter for too long, I can feel the anxiety coming up. Yeah. And just like checking out of that has really helped me a lot. I mean, Vicky Tan with Headspace, I mean, that's a similar one to Calm, I assume. Yep. With the meditation. Yep. I think a lot of people in San Francisco are like leaning towards those types of things of like, how can I kind of just stay calm and do good work when in such a fast-paced industry, right? And I think, I don't know, up front when we did that like 2 minute, it was like 2 or 3 minute meditation with 800 plus people all at the same time. I have never like seen that many people be that it was almost like playing the quiet game
in an auditorium.
In an auditorium. People. I've never seen an auditorium that quiet.
Yeah.
And it's refreshing, right? Sure. But everybody deals with it in different ways, I
Yeah.
think.
What was it about the social media that you felt aggravated this anxiety?
It's my desire to try to keep up with everything,
Sure.
or if someone's saying something that I disagree with,
Get
do I
worked up about it.
do I respond? Do I not respond? I think it's the times where I jump in and I like maybe disagree. So I'm not a man of conflict in many ways. I am very much labeled the peacemaker baby of the family. So me getting into any sort of conflict causes a lot of anxiety, even if it's not even like serious conflict. It's just two people disagreeing with
Sure.
things. That sometimes on Twitter that happens more often than on like LinkedIn. LinkedIn's like you don't really have debates per se,
Right.
but or Facebook you get a ton of that.
That's what it's built for. The debating
Yeah.
platform.
Exactly.
That's funny.
But-
I've recognized because my wife has actually recently moved her phone as it gets charged at night into our bathroom. So it's not even anywhere near her. Her reason for doing it, though, is she thinks it's going to give her cancer by putting it next to her head. We watched a documentary or something, and she was like, I'm getting cancer with it right next to me. My phone, however, stays right next to me still. It's my alarm. I hate that excuse. Buy a clock with an alarm. That's all you need to do. But my phone's my alarm. And until I buy a clock with an alarm, my phone will be my alarm. But what I have found is that those mornings that my alarm goes off and I've got notifications already, I check the notification. And then I finish that notification and I've got an email too, and I check that email. And now I've checked two different things, and now I'm like, close that, and I'm on Instagram. And then I'm scrolling through Instagram, and the next thing you know, I'm like, it's like 10 minutes later, and I just feel awful. Like, that's not how I want to start my mornings. Starting my mornings with that kind of stuff, like, already sets me off on a bad note. So it's interesting that you bring it up, like disassociating with the social media has helped with that, because those mornings where I put it away does feel better.
My wife and I actually did a purge of notifications on our phones. So we said, okay, what is it that we would want to get notified on, and then let's turn off everything else.
So what'd you turn off?
I turned off Facebook. I turned off Instagram. I kept Twitter on just because a lot of people respond to me on that one. But I still, sometimes it gets too bad. And I use the do not disturb and airplane mode a lot when I just need to, like, if I'm driving or if I feel like I need to focus on my family, I have to turn those off, or otherwise I'm constantly thinking about what did they want, who was it, when was it, especially with Slack. I've highly regulated which Slack channels
You get the notifications
I get the notifications on. I still keep it on my phone. Some people take it completely off their phone because they can't handle it, but I've highly regulated that just because I'm a person that I like to respond and be accessible to as many people as possible. And I kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better way, it's probably the worst way to say it, but take a lot of pride in being able to, like, talk to anyone that needs to,
That's
that wants
fantastic.
to talk to me.
Well, it speaks to your personality type. I mean, that's a compassionate personality type.
Yeah, it gets in the way though when you're having family dinner, or you're like, I don't know. I've struggled with that one where I just want to say I'll talk to you later, so I'll respond quickly, and then I don't know. I have to play around with that one just because I want to respond quickly, but I also don't want it to conflict with attention. And I don't know, my kids, I know my kids already to this day are like, have to say dad 3 times because he's looking at his phone too long. So I need to improve.
You know, one of the things that I've, as a family, we've done recently, my dad and I bought a cabin. It's a little shack in the woods. It's nothing
I think
extravagant.
I've seen some pictures of it. It looks awesome.
It's an escape, and there's no service up there. You don't use your phone while you're up there. There's nothing to use your phone for, and so it's an opportunity for us to, when we go up there as a family, we're completely checked out. Emails are gone, notifications are gone, text messages, phone calls, work, etc. Everything's gone, and I love those weekends. And you can tell, like, the the feeling of togetherness, or the feeling of being on the same page with your spouse or with your kids, like that is just all amplified after those weekends, and it's refreshing. And that's one of the biggest reasons we decided to go into this little venture, is more family time, less technology, less distraction, more outdoors. That was the whole idea. It's helpful.
No, it's same thing for us, even just on vacations. My wife says, I love going on vacations with you because I get 80% of you rather than 50% of you. And so we're super sad to leave vacations because we're so focused on each other and enjoying time with each other. And we're not the type that try to overdo too much on a vacation. So it's really good for us. So I love that idea that you're doing with the cabin.
Yeah.
I feel like it's sad that our society is like, you have to let people know that you're going to be disconnected for a while, or they're freaking out. They can't get a hold of you. And like, I don't know what it is about it, but.
Well, and I'm sure you recognize it because you get a handful of things that you're running with and leading the efforts on. But just with like little freelance stuff that I do, having to tell all the clients, like, I'll be out of service this week. I won't be able to respond till Monday, or I'll get that over to you as soon as I get back. Yeah, it's sad that you have to do that. Otherwise, people are going like, he's MIA. He's obviously not responsible enough to lead this project. It's just like, I'm trying to balance here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, and I wonder what that's going to be like in New York. I mean, the whole mantra is like, they work hard and play hard, right? It's just going to be like the city that never sleeps.
Yep.
So how is it? Can I really have like a well-balanced life now moving to this bigger, busier city? So we'll see how it goes.
We might have to have a follow-up conversation to see how it's going once you're in that scenario.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you watch any of the WWDC?
Yeah,
about a month or so ago. Some of the things that they highlighted in there that I really appreciated was better notification management. Some emphasis on the do not disturb mode, some emphasis on like the Siri workflows, so that if you're going to take a single action, it will start these actions in chains so that you don't have to. And I feel like a lot of those can be tied back to, like, we're trying to actually unattach you to your phone and trying to free up some headspace here.
And you started seeing that when they introduced the watch, right? It was like, you take your phone out less, and if you need 100%. To, just look at it on your phone. Yeah. And obviously, there's a lot of benefit to the notification world that it lives in, but that can get out of hand. And it's nice to see the tech companies focusing on trying to get you to use their products less, because they now can have seen the effects that it, that's what I assume.
I agree.
But
my initial thought was like, that seems counterintuitive. Don't you want us on our phones all the time, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, is like, no, they want you happily on your phone all the time.
Right.
And if that means, when you wake up in the morning and your do not disturb mode is just turning off, we're not going to introduce you to 1,000 notifications. They're going to warm you up into your notifications. Like, that idea, I am so looking forward to in iOS 12. When I wake up in the morning, I don't see notifications anymore. Instead, I see the time a little bit larger and the weather report. Cool. Yeah. And then in a couple hours, my notifications will start to roll in. I love that. When you're ready, they'll start to roll in.
Yeah.
Love that.
The second, I mean, like you were saying earlier, like, done is better than perfect. We kind of, our tech industry lives under that mantra, right? And sometimes the ramifications of, like, add something and then now it exists. Who knows what's going to happen with it? So they introduce notifications and everyone jumps on notifications. Now you're getting notified by everything. We just have to get smarter with every iteration of that. And I think that it takes some time to figure that out and do it. But I think they're on the right track. They're coming around. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate your time coming on the show.
Yeah, it's been fun.
You've had a lot of great insights and thoughts. And like I said, one of the biggest things that I feel privileged and knowing you in is the fact that this guy is kind of living by example of some of these things that I'm striving to achieve or do better in my life. You know, I admire the fact that you and your wife had these conversations and you're mindful of her needs and her desires and her happiness. She's mindful of yours and the kids, like those types of things. Those are admirable. So I appreciate your thoughts and your insights.
I appreciate that. I'm by no means perfect, but I think it's very valuable to focus on not work all the time. I feel like the movement to remote is going to be huge in the next 2 to 5 years, and the idea of balance is important.
Yeah,
I think we can learn a little bit from the Europeans.
They're better at it than we are.
I feel like they spend less time working and more time playing, but
enjoying life in the little things.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things. I was just talking to a couple of the interns at Domo right now. I said, you know, if you're ever frustrated or not happy, you need to say something, because in the end, work is means to an end. And it's unfortunate how much time we actually spend here, being that it's means to an end. But if that's the case, say something, because it's never worth going on unhappy. And I've said it to a couple other people who they're just frustrated with their work environment. They're frustrated with what they're doing, and they're not even happy doing it anymore. Then do something else. Then leave. You know, then find another job. And then, you know, because the adage, or maybe it's even too cliche, but life's too short. And there's things that are more important than work. And I do thoroughly believe that. But trying to find the balance is difficult.
It is difficult, even on the business side.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to do stuff to be successful, to keep a business successful too. So it goes both ways. So
yeah, one of the things that, in fact, it was an executive at Domo who I was having this conversation with. You know, she was the one who actually mentioned to me, work is means to an end, and your happiness is most important. And it's reaffirming to know that came from an executive. You know, that they don't look at you as pawns to get their job done, but even the executive knows that you got to find happiness. That's important.
Absolutely.
In a day where we struggle with anxieties and depressions and you know, everything else, it's important to find that balance and to focus on things that matter. So
yeah, no, and I will say that Jane does a really good job of that work-life balance.
Are you plugging Jane now?
I am plugging Jane. Just real quick, because I
do.
left
Please do.
Jane, and sometimes when you leave a place, it puts an impression on something, right? Because I mean, I'm leaving to go. It makes me look like I've got a better work-life balance without Jane, and it is true because I had so many other things, but I just want to say, like, it's a good place.
Yeah.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that gets said, because I don't know. I just want to make sure. Now, is it as good as working from home for Front and for myself? No. Like, there's balance is unique to everyone.
Well, and to that point, it could be better. I mean, it may not be better.
It may not be better. It's true.
It could completely go in a different direction if you allowed it, but this
Right.
allows you to be in control of it.
Yeah,
That's cool.
for sure.
Well, thank
Okay.
you so much. We'll go ahead and wrap this up, and that's another podcast.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. It's I'm glad you mentioned that part about